it seems clear that the book of Job is universal. It's universal wisdom for all mankind. And the rabbis discuss this at length um, as to whether Job was an Israelite before Sinai, so and then when he lived, maybe it was after Sinai, who wrote the book, and all this. So I'll share a little bit of that. So they're trying to figure out if he was just a Noahide, non-Jew, but still obviously not an idol worshiper in any way. Moses wrote his book, the Torah, the chapter of Bilam, and Job. So they're saying here, Moses wrote Job, and I've seen that in other sources that he wrote it before the giving of the Torah. This verifies the statement of Rav Levi ben Lachma, who said that Job lived in the time of Moses. Rabbah, however, said Job lived in the time of the spies who were sent by Moses to investigate Palestine, for it is written concerning Job in 1:1, Ots, this place that he was from, and dealing with the spies. Moses also mentions a word similar to this, etz, or etz, like a tree, which means a tree. But how can you say that oats and etz are the same? Moses thus said to Israel, "There is a man whose years are as numerous as that of a tree, and who protects his generation like a tree protects its branches." It's interesting about this. Many of the rabbis say that Job, the book of Job, obviously is quite Kabbalistic. We know that Job had 7 sons and 3 daughters, which will remind you of the tree of life, which has the 3 top spheres and 7 bottom. One of the rabbis who was sitting before Rav Samuel ben Nachmani said that Job never existed and is mentioned in the scripture only as a parable. And then some will say, according to your theory, then, what is the meaning of the passage in Job 1:1? That there was a man in the land of Ots whose name was Job. Even according to your theory, is not the following passage in Samuel 12:3, but the poor man had nothing, etc., a mere parable? And some may say, and the same may be said concerning Job. If it were so, why then his name and the name of the country he came from? So they're saying that it might be all a parable, but if that's the case, why the name of the place? Why his name and the name of the country? These rabbis, Yochanan and Eliezer, said that Job was from among the Babylonian exiles, and his college was in Tiberias. And then there's objections raised to all this. So just pointing out that nothing here is clear about Job, and I think it's that way on purpose. They're getting into Job's age from the time when Israel left or came to Egypt until they left. Now, what's interesting about Job's age, I've pieced this together. It said during the time of his affliction he was 70, and then clearly, I think in the last verse of the book even, it says that he lived 140 years after this, which is 210 years in total. And 210 years is the exact amount of years that the Hebrews were in Egypt. The Egyptian exile. It's 210 years. And like we showed earlier, Job was there. And it says here, read, as many years as the Israelites were in Egypt. Now this is the interesting part for us. There were 7 prophets who have prophesied to the nations. Bilam and his father, Beor. Job. So Job is a prophet of the nations, as was Bilam and Beor. Eliphaz the Temanite, who is Job's friend in the book of Job. Same with Bildad, and Zophar, and Elihu. These are Job's friends. Elihu comes last. And then they say, hence he was not from among the Babylonian exiles. In further videos, we'll show that all of these guys are all related, even to Jethro, and they're all found in Genesis 36. And then they get into whether Elihu was an Israeli or not, or Israelite. The same can be said concerning Job. But have then the Jewish prophets not prophesied for all the nations? The Jewish prophets prophesied to Israel mainly, and to the nations also. But the above-mentioned 7 have prophesied exclusively for other nations. And then another objection was raised. So you can see that this is an argument, and there's many things to consider. It says about Job, a pious man was among the nations, and Job was his name. And then they get into what level was Job at? Did he receive his reward in this world? Did he have a place in the world to come? And they say, of course. I mean, usually when you're dealing with the opinions of the sages, they don't give the benefit of the doubt to anyone who's a non-Jew, which is, understandable. But see, there are other opinions. Job lived in the time of the judges. Job lived in the time of Ahasuerus. Yeah, and there were they were not found such beautiful women as the daughters of Job. And they go on about trying to figure out when Job lived and after. And it even says here, Job lived in the time of Jacob and married Dinah, the latter's daughter. Some hold that Job was an Israelite, and some say that he was a non-Jew.